Insurance of Covea Digital. So my history is that I joined Morrison's Supermarkets retailer. I've done development. I've been an implementation manager. I've managed multiple development teams into the worlds of both development and operations, and was there for quite a while and got very Morrisonized. And I thought, oh, I best leave and find something new and see if I've got the skills to do something else. So I went into Yorkshire Water, a utility company, very traditional company, and thought, I've read some books on Agile. That'll be dead useful. I'll do an Agile transformation to Yorkshire Water. And actually, that was the first time where maybe not everything that the book says is actually realistic in a real world, especially something as traditional as Yorkshire Water. So I was the head of development and architecture at Yorkshire Water for a few years. I then went to WPP, which is one of the largest advertising companies in the world that no one's ever heard of. WPP own a subsidiary called Group M, and the Group M group do about 70% of every single advert that you see in the UK, be it on bus stops or digital media. Then was lucky enough to join And Digital as a squad lead, and started to place me at Covea Insurance as the head of engineering. And I liked it so much that I actually went permanent at Covea to be the head of engineering, and was super supportive about that move. So that's a quick journey through who I am and what I've done.
And I'm the guy, and I'm the guy on the right. So I'm Sam Watson, formerly like head of mobile at two leading northern agencies, 26 and Brass. So I'd worked on the other side, always been working with sort of like enterprise level software, but from the agency side, I think I was probably the biggest challenge to engineers. I've worked on a number of different sort of like high profile projects with GSK, Procter & Gamble and Coty. And then it was only until this year that I joined in February, having had a successful interview with Mick, where we talked about the art of the possible of disruption, and we both got really excited. And I guess that's where we start this journey today, really.
Cool. So hopefully you know a little bit about us, but whenever I'm down the pub and someone says, who do you work for? And I go, Covea Digital or Covea Insurance, most people have a blank look on their face, because it's not like a Sky or something like that. It's a very easily recognizable brand. So we're a bit like WPP. We're probably one of the biggest insurance companies that you'll have never heard of. So Conveyor is all set up to create amazing digital experiences in the world of insurance for our affinity partners. So if you were a company that wanted to go into the world of insurance but thought, I don't really have the tools, the technology, or the people trained in claims handling, well, actually, we're your company. And what we want to do today is talk about not only how we are disruptive in our own company, but how Conveyor wants to disrupt the entire insurance sector. Because let's be honest, like a great example is like Starling Bank in the finance world. Finance and banking has been really stuck in the mud for a very long time. And people like Monzo and Starling have come along and really disrupted that marketplace with an award-winning digital experiences. And when you really look at insurance, a lot of it's still paper-based. A lot of it is very old hat, and what we're trying to do is change the face of insurance and really make a digital impact. Don't know if you want to add anything on that one, Sam?
No, I think it's just kind of echoing what you were saying. I think even when I interviewed, I was still a bit unsure about who Covea Digital were and some of the brands that we work with. But as you say, like the opportunities in the insurance industry for disruption, not just digital, but just everything else around it in terms of like changing consumer behaviors and everything like that. That's what makes Covea Digital really exciting place to work as well. So this really is the start of our journey, and I think Mick's going to lead on this. But we wanted to talk about who really is this talk for.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to a number of talks where I've been like, do you know, this isn't pitched at kind of my job, my level, be it above me, beneath me, or even in a different discipline. So I wanted to talk to sort of leaders of departments, heads of departments, CTOs and CTIOs. Not that I don't want to talk to developers, but actually I want to be authentic in what I'm talking about. And I think if I started to jump properly into the world of development, I wouldn't be authentic.
Yeah,
and Sam wants to talk to.
Yeah, and I'm talking to you, everybody else really. It's kind of the people that would deliver deliver the disruptive activity. The repressed engineers, the product owners, the technical engineering managers and scrum masters and DevOps engineers, they're all the ones that are saying, we should be doing this. Why aren't we doing this? How can we start doing this? And I think it's you guys that we want to give you some key takeaways so that you can at least take them back into your own organizations and then start building your own sort of like disruptive chapters as well. And some of those key takeaways for leaders in particular, Mick.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into it, I just wanted to kind of really hit you in the face with some points. So you do need to be bold and brave. So it's very rare, especially in a traditional red brick organization, that someone's going to ring you up one day and go, do something absolutely mad. Let's completely disrupt. And actually, you need to be the ones in that position of leadership in your organization that go, I'm going to crack on. I'm going to take the initiative. And, you know, Daenerys Targaryen on Game of Thrones wanted to break the wheel. So that's what I want to hit you with again today. You need to break the wheel. Your organizations probably aren't set up to handle disruption in your sector. And actually, as soon as you start to disrupt from an engineering perspective, you're probably going to start disrupting people and processes within your own organization. And one of my old mentors caught me once and said, you look really down. And I said, yeah, because I'm absolutely knackered. No one wants to change. And he sat me down and went, but your job in the world of disruption and change is to run through brick walls on a daily basis. Did you honestly think it wasn't going to hurt? And I think that was a really, really sort of like grounding statement for me, because that really made me sit back and go, do I want to do this? And am I prepared for the pain that it's going to cause? And if you're the sort of person who's like, absolutely, well, at least you've made that agreement with yourself. Change and disruption hurts.
Yeah.
And finally, you know, I've brought some amazing people into some amazing organizations, and then the system and my activities and actions have forced them to conform to our existing poor practices. Stop hiring amazing people and telling them what to do and how to do it. The reason that you hired them was because they were amazing in the first place. Fresh sets of eyes will allow people to go, wow, that's not really how we should be doing it. And I think that's what Sam and his little merry band of men and women have done, which has really flipped it and gone, okay, what do we want to do?
Yeah, and then from my part with that merry band, it's there's some key takeaways, which is communicate but don't overshare. So, you know, I'm well known in our office of being someone to talk a lot, and I've learned a lot about how to share the right information at the right time. So that's letting people know about the ambitions of what you've got, but don't let them stifle you with some of the processes, because otherwise, if you don't let them know and you go ahead and do something, they're going to be the ones that block you. They're going to be the naysayers. But if you do overshare, they're going to kind of like give you too many processes to follow, and therefore you're not going to be able to disrupt, because ultimately you're going back into the normal system. So communicate but don't overshare is a key one, and find the naysayers and embrace them. So this is a really, really crucial one. So I find there's a slide later on that talks about reframing some of the challenges that I've had, but that really is one of the key things that I'm keen for everybody to take away. Is there's going to be so many naysayers, and they might not be doing it in a way that's against you as a person, but maybe you as a function or the activity that you're about to do, because it might step on their toes a little bit. It might be something that they've been wanting to personally do in their own sort of like career progression. You need to get them on board and embrace them, because they're going to be the ones that can help bleed and sort of like infiltrate the rest of the engineering function or product function to say like, this is the right thing that we should be doing. So it's really, that's a really key one. And then creating high fidelity prototypes can get buy-in from product and the business. So it's a bit of an obvious one really, but you've got a load, particularly at our side, we've got a load of really talented engineers. And when you're creating prototypes, proof of concepts, it's really greenfield and almost allowing any engineer to do whatever they want and almost get some of their creative juices flowing. But what that ends up doing is empowering those engineers, but also showing the business and product in particular that you're capable. You're capable of thinking the way in which your UX designers think. You're thinking about the consumer, you're thinking about the opportunities of the technology. And there's some really cool little things that you can do about your high fidelity prototypes that you can almost use as like leave behinds for your senior stakeholder to say, go and play around with it, read our developer notes, try and break it and think about things that you can do on top of it. Because really some of the stuff that we're doing is showing the art of the possible of technology, getting people excited, and then building on top of it and putting it back into the product roadmap. So there's some really key takeaways, and we're going to put this right at the end as well to say, like, I hope you've remembered that. What we wanted to do also is just touch on the last 9 months in one slide, and just to kind of manage your expectations about the journey that we've been on. So I joined in February, and Mick employed me as a technical principal to lead the chapter. And we'll talk about our principal chapter later on, about who and why and how we got to that point. But Mick had given me a challenge pretty much on day one, which was go and find out, I can't really go into too much detail about it. It was about image recognition and watches, because we've got some interesting areas in our business where we want to look at that. And it was almost, Mick, and you can be really honest here, it seemed to me like it was a challenge to see if I could accept challenges.
It was, absolutely it was.
Yeah. So from there, obviously, I had to go find resource. I had to find people to do it. I had to then present this challenge back to the senior leadership team in our IT function, but also we had to present that back to the executive board. So that, you know, within 3 months, I was getting exposure with this chapter into some really high-profile people in the business. That's exposing Mick quite a lot, to say, like, he's taken the step to put his neck on the line to say, these are the people that I want to create these products or services or features. And from that particular challenge, it was almost we was given a real challenge. That real challenge was presented to us by the executive board. They said, we want you to focus on a particular area of the business to see if you can fix it in a certain way, because, as Mick kind of mentioned earlier on, a lot of our processes in insurance are very manual, very offline. There's a lot of documents that get shared and posted, but there's technologies that we can use to kind of either improve the efficiency of it, create consistency of information, or start automating it for the future. And that's really where we want to be. So what we had to do was to deliver this real challenge. We just flipped it on its head, and we looked for volunteer engineers. You know, we tried to get resource and find. That's another thing as well. I'm just going to interrupt myself. Really, is you're always going to go for the people that you think are right for this particular disruptive activity. You want the A team per se. What we wanted to do was ask for volunteers, because we put out in our Slack channel, does anybody want to get involved in this disruptive activity? Obviously, we had to go through the hoops to get the resource approved, but by getting volunteers, you've got people, like-minded individuals that want to see change, and that really, really helped. From there, we hit challenges. July and August for me were absolute nightmares of months, because we hit challenges from people, it's holiday season, process, you know, some of the things that we were trying to do didn't follow traditional processes in our business, but we knew it was right, so we had to go through it. And technology, some of the things that we looked at weren't really fit for purpose, but we'd already put our stake in the ground, or we'd have to maybe rapidly change them. And that is some elements of that fail fast culture was really brought to light in those months as well. We delivered our solution as promised. We delivered it like in an iterative way. That was presented back to the execs again, who was kind of waiting for us to either fail or succeed. And then from there, we're now in September, just starting October. We've built this trust in the business. We've built the trust in our peers, so engineering function, product and delivery. But we've also got more requests coming in from everywhere saying, can you look at this? What do you think about that? And that doesn't undermine the product roadmap in any way. So they've obviously got a role and responsibility, which is still true. And that's kind of what drives the delivery of our entire business. But this particular disruptive function looks at the art of the possible of technology. We want to create product agnostic solutions that anybody can get hold of and go, I need that for us, let's go and do it. So it's a really exciting time we're in now. We're in this sort of like transitional stage where we're trying to now build our team to go, right, I've got lots of requests coming in, how do we manage that? So that's really what we've done in the last 9 months, and really what we now want to do is go into the detail of how we got to this part. So Mick, why did you do it?
Yeah, good question. So I've always been in a number of technology organisations, sat there and looked at the Starlings of the world and gone, you lucky sods, because being able to be completely greenfield and really drive towards something must be an amazing experience. However, in most organisations that I've been in, which have been a lot more traditional, you look at it and you're like, I'm never, ever, ever going to finish my job to get to that point. And therefore, I was like, I want to start playing with some toys, but I don't have the time to play with toys, and I'm not going to be able to really drive that vision of disruption, bearing in mind that that's what Covea Insurance is all about, without doing something different. Your classic Einstein quote. So I was bored, I was frustrated, and I thought, you know what? Actually, my entire life, I'm not an ideas man. I'm a gambler and I get things done, but I'm not an ideas man. I need an ideas man or woman.
Mm.
So I bumped into Sam, and as we said the other day, Sam, I hired a madcap fool who was bold and brave. And I set the scene about this is going to be really painful. I need you to help break the rule, the wheel. I want to stand by the decision of what I do. I knew I was going to get some grief for it, but as I say, I needed the Andy of Toy Story to come along and play with the Toy Story toys because I didn't have the imagination to bring them to life.
Yeah, and that's that breaking the wheel then, just touching on that. So for everybody who's listening, so how do we describe what our wheel is, Mick, in terms of how am I going to break it?
I think there's a massive irony in the fact that we've broken the wheel by creating a triangle or a pyramid. So yeah, I think this is my point. There's always day-to-day stuff, major incident here. Can I do this change? Can I do this, that, and the other service thing? And it's really, really important that you run your business. The reason that business has hired you is because in theory, it's a profitable business. And if you don't do your day-to-day, your business isn't going to be profitable. And then there's always going to be delivery on top of that. You're either going to go after new markets, protect the revenue markets that you've already got, maybe reduce some risk in your estate, or maybe even reduce cost by turning some technology off. And realistically, most organizations, 99% of resource is always going to be against the day-to-day or the delivery. And this is true within technology and outside of that. But then ultimately, you have to get someone or some people thinking about how to disrupt outside of that delivery and day-to-day. But where most, and I'm going to use that dirty word, where most innovation functions fail, and I've been really keen to avoid that word so far, is that little disruption or innovation section goes off, spends loads of money looking at loads of expensive technology, and the people are having a whale of a time, and nothing ever comes of it. And if it does, it never gets integrated back into the day-to-day and delivery. So actually, all you're doing is just burning cash. And that's why I was really clear with Sam when I came in to go, I need you to go and disrupt because I'm too busy. However, you can't just go off and never see you again. You've got to come back and start thinking about how to impact that day-to-day and delivery.
And that's kind of where we got to with this. Is it disruption for all? But you kind of got to be spiking something. And excuse the cheesy puns here, guys. We wanted to kind of break this little session up with a bit of fun on that respect. So Mick, you're a massive Metallica fan. You didn't want it just to be for everybody. So just tell us a bit more about that.
Absolutely. So I thought I'd try and sneak Metallica into some form of Leeds Digital Festival cascade, and I've managed to do it. So yeah, I mean, like whenever you start talking about disruption or innovation, the default answer for most people is, but that should be at the core of our principles, right? And I'm like, yes, in an ideal world, preaching in the good book, disruption and innovation should be at the heart of everything that we do. But let's be honest, we're back to that day-to-day and delivery thing. And I think that's one of the first things that you have to face into, which is actually, if you really want to prove the point of disruption, you can't take everyone with you and suddenly stop running your business. And that means you can't have disruption for all. And from an agile principle perspective, we want to be working in spikes and prove our ideas. So, I've gone for Jacko. We've got to be starting something, because if you try and take everybody and suddenly get them on disruption, you're having massive conversations that last ages. You can't feed the team with unless you have 72 pizzas. It's just too cumbersome. So that's a real important thing for me, which is you are going to annoy people by doing this because everyone wants to be on that sexy, shiny, disruptive technology. But actually trying to take everyone with you, well, you'll never start something.
Yeah. And just a quick break then, a quick show of hands, or this would have been a lot nicer if we was doing a face-to-face, and thanks to COVID we're having to do it online. But we wanted to kind of see if anybody's tried, or well, actually, if anybody's failed at trying to fail fast. And I know that's a weird statement to say, but I think a lot of leaders, Mickey, you'll sort of like echo this, is people want to do something like this, but they've just not been able to deploy it. So we just wanted a quick show of virtual hands to see if anybody's tried and failed disruptive function, innovative functions, anything like that. Just very quickly. I can't actually see my teams, and there's loads. I hope.
There's two brave hands. And either no one else has failed or everyone else has absolutely smashed it, and we should go to their talks.
Yes, definitely. So Mick, Right, there's a bit of a moment of reflection because we're going to start talking about the stuff that I've achieved. But really, we did say it was going to be quite GIF heavy, and I think this particular scene, we know what happens after this, and that's kind of what you did. You went for gold, but there was a lot of resistance and there was a lot of forethought before that. So I just wanted to kind of quickly touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, if we follow the Indiana Jones scene through, we know what happens, which is as soon as he does this, everything goes wrong. Arrows are shot at him. He tries to escape. Someone double crosses him, and then someone tries to steal the idol from him at the end. So spoilers for a very old film if you haven't seen it. And that goes back to what I was trying to say at the start. From a leadership perspective, no one's going to ask you to take this plunge. You're going to have to really, really back yourself and think about your position within the business. Because as soon as you do this, all hell's going to break loose. And if you try and have those conversations about, should we do this? Well, then actually, you'll never be starting something and it'll be justice for all again. So it's just a really brave moment of reflection. And I go back to my previous comment, nearly every innovation function I've ever seen or been part of does spend ages thinking about fancy technology and expensive proposals and never delivers anything of value. And that was the challenge of Sam. That was the only guardrail I ever gave him, which is don't become that.
And that's where we got into the next Indiana Jones GIF, which is, you know, from my side, we know what happens if this scene. If you don't, there's a very flamboyant swordsmith who tries to show him up by swinging his sword around. And I'm trying to use that as an analogy for the shiniest of shiny new technology. That's the kind of thing that people think we should be going for straight away. Let's get this brand new thing. And I think if anybody knows me who's watching this will be, that's exactly what you do, Sam. Well, actually, I'm always keen to look at what's going on in the future, but I think a way to establish this disruptive function is a bit of lateral thinking. Look at something completely differently, get some quick wins in, build, you know, earn your stripes, and then start going for the big stuff. Always be passionate about the shiny things of the future, but they're not going to be the ones that's going to help you start this function. So it really is about lateral thinking to get things off the ground, bearing in mind what about the future flashy tech of the future could be. So that brings us into what our lateral thinking approach was, which was potentially a coincidence, Mick, or it was actually planned all along. So the triangle that we've got here is the definition of our principal chapter. So Mick, we can tennis on this and just talk about how our principles, we've got a back-end principle, a node principle, a front-end React principle, a data principle, and a full stack principle. And their role is to support our tribes, to share knowledge so that we get best practice and coding standards. And then we've got disruptive engineering, but we didn't have a leader. So was it all coincidence you deployed this function, or was it just the grand plan all along?
I think there was a plan, but it was emerging. So basically, if I'd have sat down with my leadership team and gone, I'm going to create effectively a self-sufficient full stack engineering team that doesn't report into the current people or process or technology that we have, and they're going to build stuff that none of you lot get involved in, I think most people in my senior leadership team would have gone, I'm not very cool with that. So actually, it was a bit of a salesmanship to go, well, you know, sometimes people get so involved in the day-to-day and the delivery that having a group of people specializing in certain fields would be fantastic because they could come in and go, I see you're struggling with your front-end React coding. You know, this is how we do it. This is how we coach that community, almost like a mini chapter in themselves. And the reason that there wasn't a chapter lead per se was because I was still thinking, I can do this. This will be amazing. It'll be super fun. Me. And over time, those principles started to get wasted because they were really adding value in the day-to-day and the delivery, but that's only, you know, a little bit of their role. So that was when I had to be quite humble and go, I've taken this as far as I can. In fact, I'm actually taking the oxygen out of this team. Someone needs to lead them. And that's where I needed an ideas person and where I crossed you, Sam.
Yeah, and that's what helped me, to be honest, because if I'd have joined and said I'm going to do what Mick's just detailed about deploying a principal chapter, I would have faced the resistance as well, and I wouldn't have known some of the things that those principals know about the system. So what's really important is we don't want to let everybody get sucked back into it, but we need to know about it so that when we do our disruptive activity, we understand at enterprise level how to deploy things in there. And I think that's again, we've touched on how potential sort of like innovation functions can fail, is that if you get in really sort of like brand new, wet behind the ears, although very talented junior developers that know things about new technology, they're going to fail when they're trying to transition that technology and that solution into the existing architecture. So what we've done is, by having those people that are embedded into the system, I can come in and go, I take a mixed vision and I can work out what we're trying to achieve. I've got people that are waiting to be led, and it's the perfect opportunity to take them forward. So that was great, and I think that's when it became a bit of a deploying it and handing over the reins. So Mick, it was difficult for you, I guess, to hand them over, because much like you said right at the start, it's always been really your dream to do this. And you say this to me quite a lot, saying, I wish I had your job, Sam. It's amazing, because it is really fun. And the things that we can learn and develop on are really exciting. So it must have been quite difficult for you to set those guardrails without micromanaging. Because if I'm going to be honest, there's an element where as someone underneath the leader, they don't want to be micromanaged. But from my part, there was elements where I was like, I just need to speak to Mick. I need to find out if I'm doing this right. And I think that's difficult from both of us, because Mick set the vision, set the guardrails, go in these, you know where to go. And it must have been difficult for you not to micromanage me as well, when you could see that I was failing, or you could see that I was causing conflict as well.
Yeah, I think that, so there's a couple of things to that. You know, why have we got Toy Story here? Well, I cried at this scene because I remember growing up with the original Toy Story. You know, they felt part of my life. And then, you know, when he obviously hands him over to, you know, the next generation, oh God, I started crying. And it's just, you know, not necessarily as close to home, but you know, I did have this dream and this vision of a principal chapter. And yeah, I would love to do your job, Sam. I really would, because it would be my dream job. And to hand it over was quite painful, and that's why I'm talking about being humble and wanting to step aside. And I think the reason that there wasn't any micromanagement was I've been in a previous organisation, and I remember working with someone who, I'll be blunt, used to steal the kudos that I was earning, and it really hurt that me and the team that I was part of weren't getting the relevant appreciation, and someone at the top was just stealing it all. And I made an agreement with myself many moons ago that I would never put myself in that position, no matter how much it damaged me personally. So, you know, Sam was talking earlier in the call about how he would go to the executive team, and I wouldn't. And I remember my CTIO ringing me going, why are you not in this meeting? And I was like, no, Sam needs to shine. And I remember the executive team going to him, wow, that Sam bloke's really good. Well done for bringing that person in, CTIO. And our CTIO, Graham, turned around and went, no, it was Mick. Where's he? Who's he?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about being humble and for the betterment of your company and your processes.
Yeah. So then moving on into how we then turned some of those, with me now leading it, I had to build some relationships really fast. I had to remove the barriers of engineering and fix some broken bridges. So I was kind of faced with a lot of comments from a number of people across the business within numerous areas. I could have told you about this technology 2 years ago. What difference does it make now? Or we've done this all before. We've got an old innovation squad and nothing came of it. Or that product won't be on the roadmap until 2022 if you start it now, so what was the point? And it's, you know, what we're trying to do is reframe every challenge, and that's when we bring in the naysayers on board. So I do a lot of listening, I do a lot of conversations with people to find out really what well tell me about your expertise. If you could have told me about it 2 years ago, like, because that person might be the one that can help kind of invigorate some of the engineers in the function with you. Equally, let's learn from the mistakes of the past. I don't just want to listen to somebody that say it didn't work. Like, that person's probably got loads of information about why it failed. Was it people, process, or technology, or was it talent? Was it something else? So embrace that and reframe it. But then particularly, like, this won't be on the product roadmap. without knowing it, you don't know the art of the possible. I think what we're trying to do is, I've said it before, is look at technology that's product agnostic or just not even specific. We're saying, look, let's look at this thing, let's see how valuable it could be. So without having that ambition and boldness, nothing is going to happen. So build the relationships, speak to your peers around you, listen to them, and then start to reframe some of those challenges that you get into opportunities. And then equally, it's always about self-awareness and social awareness. So I'm really aware. I've said it before. I'm aware that my job is luxurious in the business that we work in. I'm aware that some of my peers might find that the work that we do it's not fair that they can get it. So, but I think what you need to do, if you're in this position where you're going to be leading a function that might be doing innovative or disruptive spikes, be aware of yourself and show your peers that you care and you hear them. So, product might not like the curveball that you've planned, that you've shown the business. They don't even know that we showed the business the first time around. That caused a lot of conflict for us. And that's difficult to kind of have those conversations, but you've kind of got to have them. Delivery might find your commitment to the execs doesn't meet any of their plans. So we'll talk about something that I said to the execs, which I maybe should or shouldn't have said later on. But you've got to be aware of that. You've still got to be bold enough to say it though. And then your fellow engineers might think, why not me, and become discouraged. And this is really, this is probably a big one, really, just to kind of like riff on a little bit, is that actually, I know that there's hundreds of engineers in our function, and everybody wants to do the work that we do, and I want them to do that work. But there's an element where we have to focus on ourselves to start off with, to build the trust from the business, build the trust in the processes that we've created, so that in the future, very near future, next year, hopefully, we can get more people involved so that they get to use their knowledge and skills in different areas. And then become part of that. But you've got to be aware that there are going to be challenges in there. And another thing was really about like balancing this boldness with humility. So when it's time to, we talk about being bold all the time at Covea. When it's time to be bold, but just don't, I'm going to say it out loud, don't take the piss, guys. So what happened, Mick? What, from your perspective, I went to the execs and I said something that maybe I shouldn't. I communicated that we could deliver something in 8 weeks from that moment in time, and that created quite a lot of challenges, shall I say, for us. But was it the right thing to do? Would I do it again? Yeah, I wouldn't ever say that again. I think I've sparked the flame, because really the spoiler on that was actually I knew that the engineering work was the easy part of what I'd put my neck on the line for, to a certain extent. It was the wheel that needed breaking. It was the DevOps processes. It was the information security. It was the kind of all the kind of like the bureaucracy that goes around kind of like red brick engineering that we needed to break. So I was confident in our engineering function, but it needed something else. And I just, I probably wouldn't do that again. And it is probably one of the best examples of that sort of beg for forgiveness, don't seek permission. If I'd have got into that meeting saying, guys, I'm gonna give them a deadline, it would have probably taken about 8 weeks to work out the deadline, to be honest. So I just went for it. So on that, you've got to balance that boldness with humility. And on the back of that, there's a lot of bricking it together. So just going back to Mick, you told me that I give you sleepless nights for that.
Oh God, absolutely. Because I mean, I'm in a situation where, in the day-to-day and the delivery, of that disruption triangle, I'm sat there going, well, I've probably got some P1s, I've probably got some really important deadlines to meet. The last thing I need is another deadline on something that's not actually important. And again, it's the thing where I know everyone's going to kick off that you've said it. You don't have any resource, and I can see all of the issues that you're going to bump into, and 8 weeks is not going to be enough. So I wasn't sleeping for a long time. And then obviously people start to chase you going, you've got a bit quiet. Is everything all right? And then the challenges come in from the leadership, because of course the default position of, if something's going wrong, the answer is more control. Let's control it and slow it down, because everyone needs to understand what's going on. And the biggest thing for me was I still wouldn't allow myself to go in and micromanage it, because actually that defeats the entire point of why I brought Sam in. And I wanted the team that Sam had created, which was a cross-functional team, to trust Sam as Blackadder and go over the top, even if they were worried about facing certain death.
Yeah, and that was and that's kind of the whole story of how we've got to this particular part. And I think it would be remiss of us not to show you some of the disruptive work that we've completed before we get into a bit of a Q&A towards the end. So the first thing that we'd worked on as a result of sort of working from home was Mick deployed a challenge to the engineers, which was, let's try and find a way where we can start managing who's in and out of the office, because obviously we've got a responsibility to look after staff and make sure that there's enough space for them. So we looked at a rapid deployment that connected to D365, so we didn't have to think about logins. We've got multiple sites at Covea across the country, so we needed to allow understand locations, floor capacity, managers get notified if there's too much, potentially too many people on that floor. And there's a date and time stamp for entry auditing, so that if in the event of potential cases, we know when and where people were. So that was really fast, and it was a great way of showing the art of the possible when you give engineers free rein to think of something. And we went and created that. And then the high fidelity prototypes that I talked about earlier. I'll just quickly turn this video on. I realize that this is it
does have sound in the background, so you might want to mute it.
Oh, right, okay, thank you, mate.
There you go.
This is some of the examples of the sort of high fidelity prototypes that we created. It will just start playing in a sec, yeah, they say. And what we wanted to do was give the engineers free rein. So this is a bit of an example. There's no real information on there about how proof of concepts can be automated in the future. So what we're trying to show here is actually the high fidelity side of it created and guided users through without any developers there to reinforce some of the key messages that we got. And actually, in some of the examples we've got like raw outputs, and we kind of kept it in this way because we wanted some people to use our demos without the documents that we've created, to then play around with it and be like, did you know you could do that? And getting them to tell us some of the things that we already know, but like letting them feel empowered to be like, I think we could use this in this area. This has got opportunities in this area of the business. And then we gave our own thoughts and feelings on the future capabilities of what's being presented, and that really helped. And actually, it looks great. It didn't take that much time because it's all built in the front end as well. But we knew what we was going to do if we was going to do it, was going to integrate it into the back end, and that's what this became. Again, just it's all done with data that we're trying to show you. But that high fidelity prototype that we just showed, this is what we've created, and all behind the scenes now uses some of those OCR capabilities. We've productionized it. We connect everything to the cloud. It all fits in with our kind of like infrastructure. It's all got our InfSec and those sort of like the checkpoints there that are checked in. It references some of our customer database. And we've got visual indicators to help the agent to process information faster, because this particular thing was very, very manual. There were people reading documents, and what we've done in the time that we've had is create a function which drives consistency in there. Which what I'm trying to get is, nobody asked for the technology to deliver this. We've shown that technology can, and therefore it's driving that change in the business. So as we kind of draw to a close of our talk, the things that we said we was going to talk about at the very start, Mick, again, I'm happy to do this bit, is be bold, be brave, break the wheel, accept that it hurts. Stop hiring amazing people to conform to your existing practices. Engineers, communicate but don't overshare. Tell DevOps, tell information security about your ambitions. Listen to what they're going to tell you. Bring them on board. Create prototypes. And then see what opportunities you've got. Thank you, everybody. I guess there's 10 minutes left. Really appreciate all your time for joining. If there's any questions, I can't actually see the chat function, but if there's any, it's kind of an open floor now if anybody is interested. Broad silence.
You've either blown the mind, Sam, or it was terrible.
Yes.
But no, I think just from me, I hope you have enjoyed our talk. We were super proud of it. Thanks so much for taking your time to come along and listen to us. If you'd rather ask a question in private, so to speak, feel free to reach out to me and Sam on LinkedIn. We'd be more than happy to have a call with any company or individual who's thinking about doing something similar. But one last chance for a chat or a raise of hand if anyone wants to jump in with any questions. Cool. Well, in which case, I hope you have an amazing day and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.